short. So what I'm going to talk about in the next 20 minutes is about what we call the HM feed store. This is how we evolved over a period of like 5 years with our journey with Snowflake in our platform, which we call HM Works. So as we have been talking a lot about AI, we first wanted to tackle what is the problem of AI. So the problem is it's an input problem, which is like how large data sets are being used and it has to be used. So like we call it dark data, which is dark data or data which is collected but never used. And the next one is how do you process it? And the third problem is like what is the output? And the fourth one is like how do you get the feedback? So it's all about collecting data, processing it, contextualizing it, as well as like creating an output which is useful for someone to apply. And lastly, continuously tune it. So these are basically the four problems, and we call this day two problems, which is this problem occurs every single day. And this is exactly what we thought like we would be solving first. First, before we even get into anything, we wanted to solve this first. So we built a platform which we call the IDEA platform, which is the intelligence, decision, and action. So we wanted to collect data from any type of source and apply any kind of models, condition, context to process it and deliver intelligence, decision, and actions which can be taken by users. And if they wanted to actually provide feedback to improve it, that comes in as a feedback. So this basically is the four step which we wanted to solve, and we built a platform based off that. So overall, what Human Manage does is like with this platform, we help businesses make smarter and faster decisions in their cyber, digital, and risk outcomes. So what is cyber, digital, and risk? I will cover in the next few slides. So what this actually does, how do we solve this problem, is we help take decisions on what type of threats to control, what opportunities to scale, which is the digital side, and you have to do both at the same time, which means like you need to manage this by balancing both, and that is exactly how you do risk. So these are the three different decisions which we start focusing on when we wanted to solve a problem. And we broke those down into multiple different use cases or products, which we would like to call. So we provide and like automate these business processes which exist in every business, but it is very unique. The problems which they have are going to be unique. So we have base, which is like asset management, context management, change management, and alert management. Then we solve the cyber problem, the digital problem, and the risk problem. So in my slides, which are going to come down in the next few minutes, I will be focusing on a cyber problem which we have solved using Snowflake and the HM platform. So what do? We build data products for day two problems. So what are our products? We call our products like intelligence, decision, and action. And this is generated for every single service which we provide. And what are touch points? You can consume this as a report or a notification or a dispatch, or you can explore it using a search function or a chat function. So if I want to summarize whatever I just said in the last 5 minutes, it is we build a service as a product, and that's exactly what we do. So this is who we are. We are Human Manage. We are an intelligence platform where you could build a lot of AI native solutions to solve your cyber, digital, and risk problems. We are founded in Singapore in 2018. We are across like Philippines, Singapore, India, and Hong Kong. We have a lot of strategic partners, including Snowflake. We mainly focus on the essential services industry, which is like finance, government, education. And we are building a lot of use cases. Today, we will focus on posture management. So now the next 15 minutes, what I'm going to focus on is the challenge which we faced with doing posture management and the architecture which we built. This is basically what we call the day zero, and how it evolved in the past, present, and future. What we will not be covering, because it's just a 20-minute session, is the how, which is like we're not going to focus on the engineering, which is how we coded this, or we are not going to target specifically on the flow, on like how we take operational decisions. So some of the definitions before I jump quickly into the solution is like what is table from a human managed point of view. So these are basically structured data which is organized into rows and columns. So you actually have multiple tables which is organized in a schema, which is what is called a schema. And you have multiple schemas which is actually collected into a database. And these databases are used by virtual warehouse, which performs analysis on these databases using different type of compute resources. Together, all these and gets encompassed into what we call is a feed store. In this case, it is the Snowflake data cloud. So about the past, we initially wanted to be more data focused and solve the data analytics problem. So the security posture management, which we focused on, was for a top SEA bank, Southeast Asian bank. And we were looking at like different type of like firewalls and networks, AWS and like cloud resources. And we wanted to do a specific type of misconfiguration check and do this continuously and report on the violations, vulnerability, and reporting. I mean, vulnerability and violation over a period of like in a regular basis. So, which is also called batch analytics. Now, this was like in 2019. So this was CSPM is something, or an NSPM is something which is like pretty early at that point in time. So we took our time in terms of understanding this, and this is exactly what you see on the right is exactly the different service components which we used. So we were successful in doing that, but how we organized it is we have in HM, we call it HM is human managed. So we call different functions and microservices. So functions are how we connect a different type of work and deliver a specific service. Microservices are obviously the different components which we break down and like assemble to build a solution. So these are the different type of microservices and functions which we used to build our solution. And when we talk about feed store, the virtual warehouse of Snowflake, which is like the analytics engine, was initially used. This is exactly how we entered into Snowflake. We started utilizing it and ran the analytics after the data was collected. Now, since we are a platform, we build a lot of databases and we call it stores. So when the data gets generated by a specific solution, this could be any type of a cybersecurity tool or a digital tool that generates data. We collect that and store it in a raw store. And then we normalize it and store it in an event store. This is where everything gets structured. And then this data gets moved into the feed store. So what we have is, this is exactly how we collect most of the application. So which is whatever data is in the event store, we move it into the Snowflake feed store using the collect microservice, for which we use Airbyte. And this is loaded into staging as a view, and this is loaded into raw, then moved into staging. And then we run an analysis where we create different type of marks using DBT, and then we create a metric view which actually gets pushed into the app. So any type of like analysis actually goes through these different type of flow which we just created. It was a very simple, straightforward flow, and this is the day zero blueprint which we created to deliver this service. Now, the feedback which we received from the customer was, this is just data. We need more intel to make this operational. And what they meant by that was we reported a lot of violations, and we actually sliced and diced it and presented it in a way that these are the critical, these are the high, these are the medium, and this is exactly what you really need to focus. And this was the feedback which we received. So we went back and we started working on how to make this operational. So there are two problems which we wanted to solve. Instead of just focusing on batch, we wanted to see how this could be more near real time. So the expected intelligence and the decision which we need to do was, it's not just about violations, vulnerability reporting, but we also need to start sending out notification in near real time. And when we find out something the customer did not want to be reported on a monthly basis, but if there is something important, they wanted to be informed within 15 minutes. So what we included was like we went back and added more components and we started utilizing Snowpipe to stream data into the feed store. So this was the original plan which we had in the past. So present today, what we have is like we created a catalog store, an insight store, a knowledge store, and a signal store. So what does this mean? A catalog store is where we collected and processed all the different type of customer specific profile. Insight store is like where we generated the different insights which we have already collected from the tool. Signal store is where like we collecting information on the interaction from the customer from the web app, and knowledge store is the industry best practices of, let's call it CIS benchmark or NIST, any type of like industry benchmark, even ISO 27001. So all these information was made available for Snowflake, which is feed store, to perform different type of analysis. And with that, what we were able to do was bring in a separate tool called metric, which is cube, which mainly does the analysis and like creates those different insights which we decide on sending out as a notification to the customer, as well as this was also made available for the customer to interact using the signal store. So they were able to generate different type of analysis in terms of like what is the trend, and based on this information we started receiving feedback. So all this information, like instead of just providing one type of a report which went out to the customer, we started building a complete cycle in terms of like collecting, performing analysis, and then publishing the result to the customer as report dispatch notification. And then they were able to provide us the feedback which we took, and then like we perform more analysis on that. So this is the current state and we are constantly learning. And as of today, the type of feedback which we got for this was the alerts are great, but we need this more simplified and personalized recommendations so that it could improve the response. What this really meant was this is more operational now, but we want something which is more actionable. How do we improve this? Now, this is great in terms of presenting intel, and you're also providing us what type of decisions which we need to take, which is you can mitigate a specific thing, you can fix it, you could patch it, you could kill it. But how do I actually focus on a specific action which we need to take? Because operations team does not have all the time and they do not have dedicated resources just to keep doing this. So we had to go back and like start creating more interactive outputs which the users can engage, can understand, and then they start working on it. So what this really meant was we are currently building what is called conversational. The conversational is not a chatbot. It is the customer having a conversation with the data. It's more interactional, which is they directly asking questions and getting answer instead of just consuming multiple different dashboards and taking an action with a lot of assumptions. So with that, what we went towards is like there was the exploration which the customer wanted, which has to be in natural language, and then there was a chatbot where instead of like going through multiple set of data, I just want a very pinpointed question where I get an answer about, like, say, for example, I would like to fix one specific configuration which gives me the maximum impact. When this query goes in, there is a response which needs to come out. So this is more of like where we were going. So based on this, what we are currently working on is we increase the different type of like functions and microservices. So now this is exactly where I'm going to start talking about the different microservices. So cloud managed is We are across multiple different clouds, which is AWS, Azure, GCP. Hackers Hub, this is a function which does the DevOps function. Data manage, this is where like we collect process data as well as like manipulate data and transform it. Identity manage is exactly how different type of like processes, systems, users are identified and federated. Code manage, this is exactly where you have the different Git code and infrastructure as a code deployed. Cipher managed is the secrets which make sure that like all those interactions are secure. Artificial intelligence managed, which is where we have all those different apps and flows. So now we have actually created this new function called AI managed, which controls most of the flow, creates models and vector, as well as like the different type of workspace. Now this is exactly where we are currently. We are building this, and how is FeedStore helping us on that? We used virtual warehouse to do the analytics. We used Snowpipe to actually make it operational. Now we are looking at Snowpark to execute the code which we already had in our existing uh, ML pipeline. We are planning to use that into executing it here in Snowpark within the Snowflake infrastructure, which is FeedStore. And Cortex is something which we are already exploring in terms of how we could use this to make it accessible from a large language model point of view to have a conversation with the insights as well as the intel which we have created. So these are the different type of microservices which we keep on adding more and more. And one good thing about like where we are is this is exactly where the different type of data stores which we have. Now we increased more data stores. We brought in a model store which can be used for accessing it. And this is right now sitting outside of the feed store. We're already exploring of like how this could actually be leveraged within the Snowflake data cloud. And then the vector store, which is where we vectorize the data so that an LLM app can actually perform an analysis and then make it more run a similarity strategy to provide a response based on the question which is being asked. And with this, like you already have the different type of like models, Git, so like Cortex as well as Snowpark, as you could see, this is actually evolving into a more complex design, but it's a matter of like actually building blocks. This is more like a Lego building block, which we are assembling based on the different type of challenges as well as the market and the environmental change which is thrown at us. So this is the evolution where we are going from where it was an analytics type of a platform towards an intelligence driven AI native solution. So this is where like we are, where how Snowflake data platform evolved with HM to deliver the different type of customer needs. We started as an analytics engine, which moved into a data analytics, which was more operational and near real time. Right now, we are at a place where it is an intelligence platform. And with that, this actually is my last slide. So if there are any questions, I could take it, or else like I could go back and hand it over to you, Faye.
Okay, I think we can have you take a break off screen. I think